Fantastic. So, welcome, Dr. Gitanjali, for this podcast. This is People's Passion and Purpose podcast with Pungi, and this is a special series celebrating stories and voices of women all across the world. And ever since I met you, I thought it would be fantastic to have you share your story with us and also to a larger audience through this podcast. So I'm very, very happy to have you here with me, and uh, yeah, welcome on board.
Thank you. Thank you. Likewise, I'm looking forward to this.
Hmm. So whenever I hear your name, I think the first thing that comes to my thought process is this Snehadhara Foundation. So how did that name even come to be? So I think I'll get from there before I formally introduce you. I think I have a question for you.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Because many times I'm referred to as Sneha as well. So, yeah. So, Snehadhara gets its name from a child, Sneha, who was one of my first children that I very closely worked with, a child with diverse needs. And I met Sneha in a regular play home setup. Sneha was also my first lesson on inclusion, where a child who visibly looks different, a child whose needs are very different, seemed to actually teach 5 and 6 year olds what it is to care for each other. So, having Sneha in a space with the so called regular children taught the regular children what it was to uh, empathetically work together, to collaboratively work together. So I felt that in the larger scheme of how one should define inclusion, there isn't a group that needs to be included and a group that's including. But here is a Sneha who seems to find her space and has a lot more to give than what we think we're taking care of a child with special needs. Like every other parent, Sneha's parents at some point were looking for a normal school because for a parent of a child with special needs, it's very sending a child to a learning space where there are other children, sending a child to a school where other children are wearing uniforms are ways of normalizing the needs
Dr.
of
Geeta,
their
your
child.
voice is not.
um, we were not very successful in that venture. Every school had its own challenges. So I came back home and I said, there may be so many Snehas like this. So let's just start something. And so Sneha gets its name. We lost Sneha last year,
Mhm.
but I don't think there's a single person who's met Sneha who's not experienced love. So Snehadhara uh, gets its tagline also from their continuum of love, care, and compassion. And I think that's what the space holds today. So that's the Sneha story and the Snehadhara story.
Oh, wow, amazing. Yeah. I mean, you said the group that needs to be including and the people that need to be included. As like, oh, that's a very interesting way to share that. And also you share the spares of, people already being able to give, and giving sometimes comes first to people. Hmm. Amazing. So art-based therapy is something, you're quite famous for. You're a TEDx speaker, you run Snehadhara, and I know you're also a coach. You're doing your diploma in neuropsychology. TA also is some of your interest because Navgati is where we met. So
Sure.
anything else that, if you were to introduce yourself, because I am not a fan of formal introductions. If you were to introduce yourself, how would you do that?
Like so tricky, but yeah. I think if I'd have to introduce myself, I'd introduce myself as somebody who believes that learning is a very learner led process. We play a very small role in influencing anybody in their lives. Nobody can walk the path unless they own it. So every choice of what I have done stems from that. I have my master's in biochemistry from Institute of Science Mumbai, and I would sit in a class as a child, very clear on how much I want to pay attention, and I would decide how much I would write in an exam. That's all I would go and write, and I'd score the marks that I wanted. So I realized that the learning process is very interesting. If you decide to figure out ways and techniques and skill of your relationship with learning, then learning is very natural. So while I graduated and did my master's in biochemistry, I was a Tata fellow and worked in had a fellowship to do some work, preliminary work in cancer at BRC Mumbai. Then I moved on to always wanted to work with people. So even as a child, for me, going to the nearby slums and singing with the children, looking at just the joy of people celebrating even their adversities was something that intrigued me even as a child. So I would wonder that with resources being so limited, how is it that they can find a certain rhythm? So fair to say there have been many times in my life where I felt guilty for being privileged. And I
Mm,
felt there's, that went on to for me to train in arts-based therapy from WCCL Foundation, Pune. Again, it was sheer serendipity. When I met Sneha, I was looking at just how learning systems were in schools. I was very clear as a very successful mainstream product, one could call, because I checklist all those boxes of being a gold medalist and all that. I realized that at the end of it, an education system only educates you out of creativity. It's got nothing to do with learning. So it was important for me to say that if we all learn differently, then the tools with which we learn also has to be different. This one size fits all McDonald burgers who look the same everywhere in the world can't work. And the arts lends itself because we've learned through songs and stories, community dancing. I was in a convent school, so choir singing in spaces like that where we had. There was very deep learning opportunities to challenge your style of learning. And if we strengthen the way we learn, then it doesn't matter what is the subject. So I think that exploration continued. I taught in Jyoti Nivas College for about 2 years French. I have not been formally trained in French, but I learned French to escape Marathi in when I was in school. I had a wonderful teacher who made learning fun. So all that I knew was I know how to make learning fun. It's easy to teach people to manipulate with content and go through the assessment of an exam, which is the smallest part of that learning journey. So that continued. I then went on to train in arts-based therapy, worked with several groups. It was very interesting for me to see that it doesn't matter what is the label of the child. Like I didn't have a formal education in special education or any of that, and I think that's my biggest advantage because I was not seeing people by labels. I was seeing people like, wow, they learn differently. There's a child who's so consistent in making like the same mistake every time. So there's a certain pattern there. There was one child I worked with who would respond better when you give a color sheet of paper to write answers on. So that was my little data collection and experimenting with my two girls who were very little. And I think that went on to me training in arts based therapy, then setting up Snehadhara. And with enough action research projects, I realized arts based therapy itself, therapy has a connotation for treatment, but the power of the arts is so strong. So, can we look at ways in which we can use arts as a vocabulary to build inclusion? So, that started my journey with arts practices for inclusion. At each stage, when I felt inadequate in terms of, I think I want to know more about this, I chose to sharpen my learning journey as well. So I think the neuropsychology and the other things that I've studied or been studying, or maybe even the community-based rehabilitation that I did with RCI was all a part of that to keep the learning on and also to keep my artistic endeavors on because I feel that's also a very important part of how I do. And it's not that you need to be an artist for that, but your own relationship with, what does arts do in
mm,
self-care has been an important part. So yeah, those are that's it. Somebody who has always been, I think, done things out of the box, not because I couldn't stay in the frame. I just felt everything was the next best thing to do, and that was a call to response. So when I realized that to handle children, adults with autism, where they do get violent, there's a lot of physical strength required. And absolutely the my streak of so-called not equality but streak of saying I would like to do this. I've gone on to train in mixed martial arts and kickboxing, and so it gave me a certain sense of trying to explore yeah, all parts of one's personality. So I think, yeah, I'm a hodgepodge of all of that. Yeah.
Wow. So, in all of this, you said something, but I caught on. You said a lot of things, but I caught on to kickboxing and a lot of other interesting things. Because in the description that I read, it said you come from a family of artists, and like possibly art becomes a most easiest of extension there. But what else do you do? I think I sort of forgot all that you had shared. That circle there that time. But yeah, I think I felt there was also a lot of things that you shared in terms of music, or you
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
music instruments, right? So mm,
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so I think here's the motto with which I lead my life, and I think the children of Snehadhara have also taught me the uncertainty with which I think we've got into what Snehadhara opened a lot of things that I thought never existed. From people having an issue with us running a special needs center and a case in the court, to losing children, to death of parents. So then I think the one mantra that has kept me going each day is to say, for all you know, today is the only day that you have. Because a lot of the groups we work with are also floating populations. They're there today, like in conflict area, we went and worked in Manipur. So we may never get to meet this child again. So here's your only opportunity to do things. And that can happen only when you start doing it for yourself. So for me, I think every day is to make sure that there's a lot that I don't mean to say we fill the day, but here's a precious opportunity to do all the things that will help you stay the course. So singing, naturally, I come from my maternal family. Maternal side of my family is very musically inclined. So obviously, we come from a family also where you have to learn to sing before you can talk, and dance before you can walk. So it was like that. Childhood was like that. At that time, it was more learning the art form. I think I didn't appreciate it because when everybody was outside playing, and there was like Derek O'Brien's Bone Vita quiz contest, I had to sit with my music teacher. So I didn't enjoy that as a child. But I realized that the I think my introduction to the arts early on has just made me believe that you can just move and shift with everything. And I think the fluidity of the art, though I learned Bharatnatyam, which is like, it can't be anything which is more rigorous. I learned also from a school which was a very strict teacher. So I think music and dance was very natural because of the family. I come from a musical family. But yeah, I think when you hear the rest of the people in my house, I am one of the lower ranking singers. But I think it was my relationship with music, appreciating what songs do, how sometimes hidden in these songs are feelings and emotions that allowed me to access my own struggle. So I think it was that. I have trained in drumming and drum circle facilitation, and just got back also from a 4 week of intensive training in Guinea, under Master Barbara. And that was a life changing experience for me last year, where I felt it's not about learning the skill of a rhythm, but the presence of connectedness, which I think so beautifully came up in that. So at every level, I feel something appeared which said, this is like the next nice thing to do. I ride a motorbike. So when I would go for kickboxing, and then I would see all these guys coming in motorbikes, and I would feel like, oh, wow, this is a very interesting thing to develop for yourself, because I always was scared. I've driven a car, I've never done a two-wheeler. So I felt, oh, why not? If neuroplasticity is true, then I think close to 50 also you can learn these things. So I think it just became things that fuel in, because I also believe in caring for another where I'm able to care for myself. That's something that's worked for me. So yeah, so I think that's been my relationship with the arts as well. We do have a lot of musical instruments at home. We play, my husband plays. So I wouldn't say I play many musical instruments, but yes, voice, movement. I am not the most regular student, but still trying now, learning Nritya from a teacher who's also been a big inspiration in my life. So yeah, that's been my dabbling with arts.
wow, wow. If this means dabbling, then I don't know what we we actual dabblers have to think about. So fantastic. Kickboxing, bike riding, drum, uh, singing, Bharatnatyam. I think the list has more possibly that we will be able to unearth as we go on. I've also done this, I've also done that. So I am now in a quandary. Do I look at more of what you've done, or do I look at Snehadhara and the impact that it has created for you and for others? Because I read somewhere in the introduction that 7,000 plus kids have been impacted so far, and
Yeah,
that is a lot. Like fantastic. Thank you for doing that.
thank you.
So,
Wow.
how does it feel to have something as vibrant a community as that? Uh,
Okay, I think I like the candid nature of this talk. Um, Truth be told, this was not a part of a design or strategy. In fact, when I had to put it all together for the TEDx talk is when I really struggled, because it seemingly looks like there was a clear strategy. These were the numbers. This was it. Honestly, that was never how it is, and that's never how it is. Um, Snehadhara was a call for action, and knowing that a child like Sneha was not given an opportunity to be in school, it was very important for me because I knew it to do something about it. So everything else emerged from that. So when we started working with children with special needs, we realized that only working with children will not help. We need to work with parents. Society has a role to play in inclusion, and this is something. It's a collective. So I think, and when we said when that was required, I think we started enrolling everybody who I felt are the people who are a part of this larger system. Like I keep saying today, my job was only to set up Snehadhara and actually find the people who are going to be telling its story and moving it around. So, working with government schools became a natural extension because mainstream schools were not allowing me to bring my children with autism into the schools. Government schools were happy to say, wow, along with teaching our children and bringing in these creative ways of learning, you're welcome to bring your children in. It was like that. Public spaces and social inclusion experiments. It was important to start enrolling people. So I think the impact grew more in terms of its need. And then when we decided that schools were responding to this really well, when I went to schools, I saw there was like a separate special needs remedial center, and there's a separate section for children. They come together during assemblies, and earlier, now the trend is different, but earlier it seemed like two parallel governments within the same space. So it was important to start polishing, or increasing a vocabulary of people to say, guys, within existing learning protocols, it's possible to fit this through. Then there was a time, I think, between 2015 and 16, where we were working across the country in so many schools. And most of them were, and at that time, again, it was not important to say, is this a revenue generation program? I never thought of it as a business. And I think that's important also because that's an extended philosophy of how Snehadhara works. There is so much abundance. So if we know that there is a need, we just do it. Things seem to come together. And that's the belief with which I've run the space. Then we realized that it's not possible for me to be in so many spaces. There is going to be a requirement to train and have an ecosystem of people who will do it together. So that, birthed the third vertical of our training program. Then we put together a course. And then we realized that now instead of 2 people and 3 people training, we have over, I think, 120 practitioners who have passed out right now under us, with us, who are doing this work at different spaces. So I think that model of um, that model of ripple effect for me, butterfly effect. I heard one of our board member had shared it in one of our talks, which I thought was interesting. Is the method that was used. So honestly, if you ask me, how does the impact feel? I feel the developmental deficit is so much that it's not from a space of modesty, but I feel there's a lot of ground to cover. And I think each time there is a recognition or something, I feel the moral responsibility to make sure that we stay the course and we do this is extremely, extremely high, because today nothing that we do can change the reality of a parent who is going through what happens after me. Nothing that we did, even though we did get there to Manipur in the present situation and did some relief work there, it's not going to change the life of the reality of what people are. So I feel from that position, there's a lot of ground to cover. So I'm just happy people like even you for today paying attention to Snehadhara's story. From that perspective, I think that impact worked. Because
Mm.
if that numbers were not there, corporates would not look at me. Neither would TEDx, nor would. So if you ask me, I would say the 30 children we are working with, when we started working with, need us for 30 years more of their life. And I just want to make that journey with them. That would be an ideal situation. But I think, yeah, so impact, my relationship with that is to say, let's start polishing every mind and, challenging every mind to say, in whatever you understand, make inclusion a part of your everyday life. I think that's my impact thing. Those numbers are honestly, it's an end of the year annual report, or it's a CSR proposal requirement for me to say that, we need to put it together. Otherwise, I feel, and it's also philosophy, because this puts you in a position of you're the giver and there's somebody receiving. I don't think
Mm.
the relationship with vulnerable groups is like that. We don't know oftentimes who's giving and who's receiving. I tell everybody in my team that, we are so lucky that we actually have so many therapists working on us and we get paid also. So I think that's my version of impact. But yes, numbers do matter. I mean, if you think about the story of the 100th monkey, and a critical mass is going to bring about that change, I think we are making that move in, because we chose a methodology that was unheard of. Like even today, people say, "Okay, what are the other things you do?" Okay, arts I understood, and I'm saying that's what we do. So I think that's a bit, but now I think it's different. There are a lot more awareness of it, and people are looking at complementary health practices. There's a lot more sensitization there. So yeah.
Mm. I think the numbers are somewhere like like you shared. Sometimes it's stats as is, but also like for each of those people that you have or the foundations actually enabled, for them that's still a difference. That
Yes.
number
Yes.
keeps on adding. And yeah, anyone who's in the volunteering space will also say the same thing, saying, "Hey, it's still a long way to go in terms of get
Yeah.
where we want to get to."
True.
Yeah, and then because if I also been in both similar, so I know the same dialogues that I would have said. Same
Yeah.
dialogue that you're sharing. I know
Yeah.
exactly how that looks like. But for somebody who has literally no idea what is arts-based therapy, if you were to give a 101 on it, what would it be?
Okay, so arts practices for inclusion, I think that's what I would talk about. Expressive art therapy, art-based therapy, creative movement therapy. In a very nutshell, it is looking at arts as a language with which we are meeting learning or therapeutic outcomes. So to completely demystify arts practices for inclusion, can we look at music, movement, theater, drama, play, directive, non directive play, visual art, drumming, storytelling, story sharing as a tool or a language to help or to allow people from vulnerable groups to um access their needs. So, simplistically put, arts becomes that language with which you're communicating. Given that the arts is so diverse and it bypasses the rational mind, the arts, I think it's just where you are, it's your being. There's an opportunity to bring a very non-threatening way of even yourself, accessing parts of yourself which you might have not wanted to in a very non-threatening manner. When such spaces are created and people feel belonged, people feel together, there is a freedom to choose whether I want to participate or not. There's a freedom to choose what I want to engage in, how much I want to. Such spaces, if they're created for people, then it is automatically a therapeutic relationship. So,
Mm.
who does not feel belonged, or who does not feel held or contained in a space where this triad comes together? So, that's basically arts practices for inclusion. I could use it with schools, with children, where I'm saying, I want to teach you something, I want to teach you how you can learn. Let's use music, let's use, so it's not the annual day performance where we put together a production, and I've been sent out of so many schools just because of not agreeing to do that. But it's not about the product at all. So I do not work with products that children with special needs can, not at all. Arts becomes a language because we understand our perceptual world is what we experience through our senses. And people who are with special needs, people who are coming from trauma, their perception of their perceptual world is very different because of their relationship with their senses. In such a situation, we need a common ground where we can come together, where communication is not necessarily always about speech, where its inclusion is about the gift of presence. And the arts lends itself. So I think that's what we have attempted to do. We've also put together a first of its kind course, a very 486-hour course on arts practices for inclusion, where we also want to understand the science of the arts, because
Mhm.
clearly today, with evidence based literature and art reviews that is present on the, with neuromusicology, or the, neuroplasticity based on how the arts lends itself to building new neural pathways. We're picking that up to say that yes, there is evidence. We also have real time evidence, because I think till date we may forget the tables, but we'll remember the tune of the tables.
Yes.
There are certain things that we remember. Shlokas are chained to a tune because the capacity to remember is a lot different. Community dances and garba, dandiya. I mean, I feel traditionally there's so much that we have in our country. Today it's just getting packaged differently and coming from the West. We're opening our own parcel and we're saying, wow. But I think this is what we've always been doing. Culturally, Kadhe Kalakshamams, and then kathas, and, storytelling techniques, the way we would do Ram Leelas, are all very much there. So I feel and that's more accessible. That's within my landscape of experiences. So can we use that and create those community spaces? Because for large population of people whom we work with in the autism spectrum, it's a social behavior challenge. And what better than this to create social spaces where people can come together? So that's what it is in a nutshell for a layman. And I think simplistically today, if you're going through a tricky phase in your life and you listen to a Kishore Kumar song, it's a no-brainer that you'll connect. You'll
Mm.
feel he's singing it for you. Or that breakup song did so many rounds, for all the people I think who
Mm.
went through those phases. So there's a capacity for us to access parts of ourselves in a very non-threatening manner, and we know this. Today there is evidence literature, but this is always known.
Mm.
So I think that's
Mm.
that's what it is in a simplistic way.
I think true in terms of, some of these aspects are, we are opening our own parcels. I think that I truly believe in terms of, I think everything, arts, medicine, learning, uh,
Sure.
science, philosophy, everything is taken from here, then comes back, and then, oh wow, then, and then suddenly
I
it's
know.
like we've had it for so many years.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also very beautifully put in terms of, art becomes like a language of expression, of sharing, of putting whatever is inside out, and then that vulnerability of sharing it, and also builds that. I think vulnerability builds trust, trust builds vulnerability, and it's like the cycle goes.
Yeah. 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 And the word heart also has art in it. So, I mean, it's right there for us. I think. Forget anything else. So, I
Yeah.
think, yeah.
And art is so encompassing that anything and everything that you do becomes that. So, like an elephant painting itself also is art. Sometimes
Correct.
random stuff becomes art. Abstract art doesn't need to
Correct.
have forms. It doesn't need to have like the same structure that everybody needs to have.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So,
it's appreciation of something which is fine and just paying attention. See, there's an artist in each one of us. The fact that your heart is beating means you're a drummer, is my standard line that I say. So even the appreciation, I may not paint, but the appreciation of, say, visual aesthetics, it's so culturally there for us. So I think even like if I have to put a bindi, there is a certain sense of symmetry I need to have. So who says that we are not artists? It's just that can I access that? Because that is the companion for me, which is actually going to help me access parts of myself and then extend it outside. Because I think if you're able, the only reason you're able is you have to pay it forward. Otherwise, there's no reason, there's disparity. And that's my theory of inequality or disparity in the world. If you feel you're privileged, pay it forward. There's no other reason you're sitting on that privilege.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think paying it forward is one of the most essential spaces that we also, as in, like, it's also like the packaged format that's come to us. That we've always had some of the other person pay it forward, because I remember this story in terms of Bhishma. Bhishma is on his deathbed, and all of these, even Kauravas and Pandavas, come to him, and he shares the entirety of whatever is his learning. And also, when Ravana dies, I think Lakshmana goes and learns whatever there is that they have learned. I think that I don't see in any of the, say, other stories that we've get to hear,
Mm.
that such a
Mm-hmm.
depth of space of paying it forward happens. And I think even in some way it was also inclusion. So you may not be the, say, ideologically we may be at wars, but I still see you as the person.
Right, right. So true. And that's also that is empowerment, I think, in the way I've understood it. Because when people would come to me saying, "What are you doing to empower the children
Mm,
and the adults?" I would keep saying that no, that whole I don't think there's an agreed understanding or a denotation meaning of empowerment, which means independence and livelihood. But empowerment is also people to take accountability for where they are and how they are. And I think that can, and the pay forward is a shared responsibility according to me, because then everybody is a part of that journey, and I think that's the only way.
absolutely, absolutely. And I'm sure there are stories that you have that keep inspiring you day on day. Would you like to share a few of that?
See, I think for me, the journey of any parent of a child with special needs is a story in itself, because I feel it's not easy to kind of figure out um, what next with your child when it comes to a parent of a child with special needs. So I feel I've met such inspiring parents. I wonder what keeps them going. The question, what after me? Who takes care of our children when we're gone? Is an important question, I think, for everyone. But for a child, for a parent of a child with special needs, it has a very different meaning. So the residential campus of Snehadhara was set up with just that question, to say, why wait till what after me?
Mm,
Let's look at how the child or adult is able to adapt and take care of themselves. So I think every child's journey for me, Sneha's, performance, when I met her, I mean, my first inclusive performance was having Sneha up on a stage to do a program during annual day. And the only instruction that the children got in the group that I was handling was, our focus is not on how we dance and how we look, but it's about how do we do this together with Sneha. And trust me, for me, that's one of the most beautiful pieces I've ever seen, because the children took charge. So I think the stories have been beautiful to see how every parent, I think, is a warrior. And the negotiations that they make, their journeys are not easy for a child in the autism spectrum, where, the world understands disability. The large majority of the world understands disability as either visual impaired or on a wheelchair and locomotor disabled. People take a long time to understand neurodiversity. I think for parents to kind of show up each day to this reality is the most inspiring story for me. And I think I can do this lifetime after lifetime, because I feel it takes a lot to kind of hang in there and keep it going. So if you meet the parents of the children who come to Snehadhara and who stay with us, I think you'd look at them and you wonder, how have they cracked this formula for themselves? I think that those my most inspiring stories would only be from, I think, every parent who I have met, their own challenges, because it's not easy. The children go through a lot of issues during puberty. They're not welcomed into most spaces. So I think from all of that, every day there seems to be a story, and also the other beautiful story on where we've had a lot of backlash from society at large. We've been the most recent was our last year's Gollahalli railway station, where we were told to take the children back because they would spoil the sanctity of the space. At the same time, we've had spaces and donors and well-wishers who have never met us but who are such a part of our journeys. Like it could be somebody, a corporate team that's come, 30, 40 of them who have no idea on what neurodiversity is and came with the idea of planting trees and painting walls. They only come there and realize it's something else here. But them remembering a child for his name or her name, even years after we meet, I think those are validations and testimonies that there is goodness. We are inherently compassionate. It's just that we are caught in everything else. So I think it's fair to say, despite all its challenges, I have only met people who have been loving, compassionate. The journey has been tough. I mean, it's not always easy. But having said that, I think the children have taught us that we're all caught in our own. And if there is an opportunity, we will show up not just to ourselves, to each other for sure. So I think that would be yeah, some of the many 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 stories that would fit into these two buckets. Yeah.
Wow. So there's I think so much that somebody has to now, come to Snehadhara and
Come,
experience
come.
themselves, how it looks like, because the way you share it, I think what I am perceiving it as, I think, anybody who's listening or even I can only see it in real, and then that's the experience I will have to take back. Wow. So, I don't know what question to sort of go ahead with this one, because there's so many questions in terms of like you said, like people are there in the residential space, and I also want to look at some of these aspects where you're training people. So what's the aspect of that training? So you choose which one to work for.
I think I'll start with saying that it is also not so romantic as I make it sound. But yes, I least did I expect at the start of the journey that there'll be so many things that we'd have to confront each day. But having said that, when we weigh it together, no, the learnings of this have been far greater. Maybe there were times where I was not equipped to handle it. We also face attrition. Not having funds is a classic requirement for an NGO. So it's not always uh, that part. So, I would say I hope TEDx invites me again for a talk on never start an organization. I want to give like a 40-minute talk on that, because I feel at some stages, I feel that my strength has been in directly working with children and people, but somebody has to do all that I do. So, if given a choice, I'll trade this off. Like I'll keep saying, executive director's chair is the one right up for grabs, whoever wants to take it. So, I feel somewhere to find that balance on what you really would love to do and want to do, and what you just have to do has been a bit of a tricky thing. But I have a very diverse board. I have board members who come in as not just mentors. Sometimes I feel they're the assassins I've hired to kill me, and keep a check on. There are ways. Don't give up. We can work through this. And I think those have been they've been great mentors. So I've met a lot of people in the journey who've kept this going. The training again stemmed from this whole thing of scale and percolation model, all of which I have never been to a corporate space till I went in for the first training, I think to Oracle. And I know of only trainings where we sit down in a circle, I make people dance. So I had all these guys who in formal wear ties, but we still did what I would usually do. And I came out saying, Ki, what is this? These windows don't open. You don't know whether it's day or night. Even to go to the loo, you have to swipe a card and everybody knows you're going. It was like that for me. And so the corporate lingo for me was very new. I wouldn't understand SOP, and who knew what it was, because here is somebody who's learned Word and Excel by sitting in an internet cyber cafe in 2012 and YouTubing on how to work on Excel. So I come from that because I'm very pen and pencil. You have to smell the book, that kind. So first of all, technology. Then to add to it was understanding the finance and account, and then this whole corporateness of thing. But I've been very clear that there is going to be best practices in everything. So, and I'm also very greedy like that. So I said, let me take all the best things that work well in corporates and put it together, and learned that. So I think the training idea of plan for scale came in clearly because of the mentorship from the board to say that, how do we take this to scale? How do we do this? And I've been fortunate enough where the decisions have not been we scale up because we need the money and we need a corporate who wants to fund an idea, but to say, here is an idea and we want support for that. And I
Mm.
think the almost next idea was to say, can we not just train? Because I feel these one off workshops where we go and talk to people about inclusion never helps. It's a feel good. And if you want a feel good, I say go for a full body massage. But if it is going to be something that you want to like really work through, then you have to invest in that rigor. And I think that's the mainstream science student in me talking. So I think rigor has been a very important part of Snehadhara's journey to say that, we may not know many things, but we can crack it. We need to learn it. So I'm still very particular about full stops and commas, and it's worked against me in many ways. And you would very clearly be able to by now tell me what is my driver, but what driver would I best represent? But I still feel that the if you want to continue doing what we are doing and what you're passionate about, you have to get all these clerical things out of the way. So it should be a no-brainer. Just do it. You don't. There's no creativity there.
Mm.
So I think that has been how the training program got also designed to say that, no, can we have more people doing it? And it doesn't stop with just training. The training has very strong supervisions where
Mm.
we are not letting out loose cannons. We're also not, because it's very easy. I think today's day and age, you attend one training program and then by the time you're out of the training program, you're already announcing your own workshops. So the stamina to kind of stay, brew with it, try and test out these methodologies. I think I've had that luxury because I choose to learn like that. So, like, even my coaching thing was like, as somebody who's been offering therapy and counseling sessions, the whole coaching experience for me was very different. And it was like, for me, it was like art film and Bollywood, because it was like a large portion of my work is I'm talking to people who have been victims of trauma. There's so much loss, there's so much suffering. And here it was something very different to say that, oh, these also can be issues. Like, how do I put forth my viewpoint to a manager is an issue. I mean, so for me, it was a nice indication to say, to skill myself a little bit in that, to contain myself. So I think somewhere those opportunities, and I've taken the best of that within what we have offered for the training program. I didn't think at that point this would get picked up as an innovation and we take it to Nepal and Sri Lanka. And this year we're doing 2 batches for India. I mean, it's just then now I feel that, yeah, now now we've arrived and it's time to just take it from here. Not because there's any plan for scale. I'm just happy that what started as one person 12 years ago, there are 200 people right now
Oh,
speaking
wow.
this language with just the people we've trained and all of that. I think through workshops and all that, those numbers will be much higher. But people trained under us, close to, yeah, about 150, 200 people. And which means, wow, I have an army now. So I'm just happy. So I can wage the war.
Yeah. I think so 1 to 200 in a space of 12 years, considering that, you have to go to war every day, and that's a, like a wonderful army to have. Oh, absolutely. And I think, I'm just realizing that, it's almost been like around 40 plus minutes that
I
we've
know.
been speaking. And I'm like, oh, it looks like this is the trailer for the movie. So, there are more podcasts, hopefully, in terms of me and you and sharing your stories, sharing other people's stories, a part of Snehadhara. And yeah, I think maybe, the cliched question that came to me is, if you were to share a message to the world, I know you've shared a lot of things to be read under the, between the lines, but if you had to explicitly share a message, what would that message look like?
We have only one precious human life, and the preciousness of that can be best put to use if we learn how to receive and give love. So I think the only message would be that if we are aspiring for a compassionate society, then it's just about accessing that compassion, which all of us have in abundance. Because if somebody is tripping in front of me, my natural tendency is to reach out and help. So we are all wired to care. And I mean, that's about it. Here's an opportunity for you to venture into a caregiving space, because at some point in our lives, we're always going to reach a situation where we are receiving or giving care.
Mm.
And I feel as catalysts of change or change makers, or to, kind of to write the future of a world that is inclusive, that is accepting in today's day and age of so much turmoil and suffering. I think each one of us have a role to play, and your path begins where the practice starts. So let's start.
Yeah, I think that's one of the themes that I've seen across the entire 40 minutes is let's start and see where it goes. And
Yeah.
somewhere I heard you share that you start and then things follow suit and things just fit together. Wow. So I've had a lovely conversation with you. Usually I ask saying, what are your closing thoughts? But I think I'll pass that and says, I'll look at it for the next podcast. Okay,
Thank.
there's more. Because I think I felt we've gotten into the lot of Snehadhara space, but not yet reached Gitanjali space yet. So, we still at that.
It's a very tricky space, but yeah, I would look forward to that as well. But I think I would like to say something. I keep saying that uh, the social world of our children needs to expand with many, many more people who understand diversity in learning. And truly, the kind of questions you asked, your interest in the work that Snehadhara does is a clear example of, wow, the social world is expanding. So thank you so much for that. And this is what I mean by saying just start, things will happen. This is one such.
Yes, yes, yes. So and sometimes you never know where the rains are going to fall and where it's going to take the rain. So
Absolutely. Thank you. It was so lovely. I mean, I didn't realize we've spoken for close to an hour now, but yeah, thank you.
yes, yes, yes. So I only sort of paused there only because of the attention span of speakers, of listeners. Otherwise, I would have like gone into a lot more detail. Your expansion into Nepal, that space in terms of workshops in Manipur, the interventions in
Yeah.
Manipur. And how does somebody come to Nelmangla? What's the space? Can people stay there? When is the next workshop? Like many, many, many offsets, many questions are there.
There's
Uh,
only one answer for that. We await you with open arms, and everybody who's listening to this as well. Just tell us you're coming, and we'll figure out what you're doing with that space. Because the space gets charged only by the people who choose to come there and
abs-
become a part of us. So, whenever, come
Absolutely.
off.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Gita. And then, thank you to also all the work that you have triggered and your team continues to work with. And I think we need more stories from you
Hmm.
and more stories like you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really my privilege. Thank you. Lots of love.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye bye. Yeah. Bye.